So welcome everyone to the Cahaba River Society annual meeting. I'm Beth Stewart, Executive Director. Every year I get so excited and grateful seeing all the wonderful members and partners who keep us strong and effective. And this year especially, we thank you. We've been working from home since March, and of course, on the river. So we've been working from the home and on the river, and we've been able to pivot and meet special community needs during COVID and even expand the impact of some of our programs because of your support. And so today we're honored to be able to honor our wonderful Dr. Randy Haddock, who has retired after 30 years devoted to the river. We'll then have a brief business meeting to elect new board members and introduce you to our leadership. You'll hear more about our programs and our impact in 2020 and where we're headed in 2021. You'll learn about our fabulous junior board and how to get involved. And then our keynote speaker, Nat Mund, will bring us some hope, opportunities for good progress for our rivers and water in the new federal administration. And we aim to do all that in an hour, and then invite those who can to stay past 1 o'clock, take part in Q&A with Nat and our staff. So through the meeting, if you have questions either of the society about our work or of Nat's, put those in the chat box and we'll be coming back to those to 1 o'clock. Or if we don't get to a question, we'll try to answer them afterwards in our follow-up. And before we start, some Zoom instructions and etiquette. I think you probably all know how to use Zoom at this point, but everyone except for speakers will be kept on mute. Again, ask questions in the chat box. Keep in mind that private messages, even in the chat box, can be seen when the call is over by the host. So don't say anything about us. You don't want us to know. You can toggle between the speaker and gallery view in the top right corner. And if you want to see everyone in the virtual room, that's gallery. And then speaker view will work best during the PowerPoint, probably. You can tell us who you are, especially CRS board and junior board. Down, you can click on your name in your box and edit it using the rename feature. We are recording the meeting. We'll make that recording available later in an email with all the links from today. And if your camera is on, don't do anything you wouldn't want recorded. Especially be careful about what your camera is showing. If you take a break, you know what I mean. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Scott Duncan, who's presenting Randy Haddock with our rarely given Lifetime Achievement Award. Scott is professor of biology at Birmingham Southern College, a former CRS board member, we're proud of that, and author of 2 fascinating books on the biodiversity of Southeastern rivers, Southern Wonder, and a new one that's going to be out sometime in 2021 or 2022. It's called Creeks to Coast, Restoring the Rivers at the Heart of America's Freshwater Biodiversity. So you can check the chat box. There's going to be more information about Scott there. There's going to be a link to his first book and how to sign up for his blog that's coming soon. Scott, take it away.
Beth, and hello everybody. I see lots of my old friends have joined the meeting, and lots of new friends. So it's nice to meet everybody and see some folks from that. It's been a long time since we've been able to get together. So it's a pleasure today to have this opportunity to present this award to Randy. I think many of you know that 2021 is a meaningful year for CRS because this is the first year in a very long time that our beloved Dr. Randy Haddock is no longer on staff at CRS, though he will continue to advise the Society as Science Director Emeritus. Even though Randy retired a few months ago, we've asked him to join us here today so we could honor him and his legacy. Randy began working at CRS in 1991 to protect the Cahaba River and the people who depend on it. Measured in time, this is a full 30 years. Put another way, Randy gave our community at least 7,300 work days, or over 60,000 hours. And that definitely doesn't include a lot of weekend work that didn't get tallied into that. But Randy's legacy is much bigger than numbers can actually capture. Over those 3 decades, Randy became a foremost expert on Southeast River ecology and has helped people in Alabama and across the country realize how special the Cahaba River is. Randy's legacy began early when he solved the long-standing mystery of how the Cahaba lily reproduces. Randy spent a spring night sitting in a folding lawn chair in the middle of the Cahaba River, armed with a flashlight and an insect net. By dawn, he had discovered that the lily was pollinated by a beautiful sphinx moth. That story is now legend and has even been celebrated as an illustrated story in a children's magazine. Unfortunately, for people like Randy who love being outdoors, accomplishments in river science and conservation are rarely achieved in the river and never overnight. Victories are won with patience, persistence, passion, and by spending long hours in conference with experts and policymakers. But here is where Randy created some of his greatest legacy. Sarah Stokes, senior attorney for the SCLC, the Southern Environmental Law Center, was often at those conferences with Randy, and she shared this reflection. I love the way Randy gets so passionate when we meet with agencies. He'd sit there and listen and listen and listen and take a bunch of their excuses. And then finally, there's a point at which he can't take anymore and responds. His responses were scientifically sound, but surprisingly and refreshingly passionate. It would take the agency guys by surprise and was one of the reasons he was so effective. So what did Randy get done in the policy arena? More than can be shared here, but here's a few highlights. He helped develop Birmingham's stormwater and green infrastructure codes. He helped shape stormwater permitting for Alabama Department of Transportation. He trained over 1,500 development professionals and city officials on stormwater and water quality issues. Randy helped with 2 lawsuits involving the Clean Water Act violations that threatened the health of the river with nutrients, sewage, and algae. And Randy was an expert advisor in the development of Alabama's Sustainable Water Management Plan, which, when eventually implemented, will help the state emerge from its ongoing water crisis. Because of Randy and those he worked with, the Cahaba River, a major source of drinking water for our region, is cleaner than it's ever been in 50 years. Randy's also leaving behind an impressive educational legacy. He is an outstanding teacher. He's patient with students and exuberant about rivers. I know this from watching him teach young children and college students. His favorite classroom is the river. He's led over 400 canoe trips and taught thousands of children through CRS's hands-on education program. Randy has also educated many of us, myself included. When I moved to Birmingham, I knew very little about rivers, but Randy mentored me and also became one of my first friends in Birmingham. And for that, I will always be grateful. Thank you, Randy. But I want to pivot away from praise and sentimentality just for a moment and finish by celebrating another of Randy's most delightful attributes, his sense of humor. If you spend enough time with Randy Haddock, you will find yourself in stitches. I asked a couple of Randy's coworkers for a few stories. Gordon Black, CRS's education director, shared this. Randy and I were paddling at Living River one day and stopped near where the old dam used to be. When we hopped out to stretch our legs, Randy noticed a large flock of birds feeding on privet berries. In a sudden fit, he sprinted up the bank, waving his arms and shouting at the birds to stop eating and spreading this invasive plant. The birds scattered in a panic. But as Randy returned triumphantly, they immediately returned to the feast. Randy hung his head low and trudged dejectedly back to the canoe while I suffered a fit of laughter. Beth Stewart shared this gem of a story. On a CRS canoe trip, Randy once had a very energetic and chatty boy in his canoe, and the kid was driving everyone a little bit crazy. Seeing an opportunity, Randy sidled the canoe up to the riverbank near a hole and knocked on the bank with his paddle. Suddenly, there was a loud thumping noise and several young beavers tumbled out and splashed into the river right in front of the astonished kid. Everyone had a good laugh, and for the rest of the trip, the boy was wide-eyed and blessedly quiet. So Dr. Randy Haddock, you have worn many hats over the years. You are a gifted scientist, policy wonk, and educator, and you have won our hearts. The Cahaba River, all of us, and generations to come, owe you so very much. Randy, to thank you for all you've done for us and the river, we present to you today the Cahaba River Society Lifetime Achievement Award, which I have right over here and will hand to you now. Here we go. Thank you, Randy.
So I presume at this point I'm supposed to paw through all this stuff. Oh my goodness.
There you go.
Can't see it.
Oh, it's a great picture.
Well,
yeah, the green screen kind of hides it.
Oh dear. Well, it's grand. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much. I want you all to know that I feel very loved and appreciated at this moment, and thank you so much for that. I'm very, very, very grateful. Thanks.
You're also getting lots of compliments, Randy, on your shirt and your beard. I just wanted to let you know that.
All right. So next we have Pam. Are you next?
Yes.
I think we're ready to go.
All right, then. Well, hi, I'm Pam Ball, and I'm the outgoing president of the Cahaba River Society, and I call this business meeting to order. The plants and animals inhabiting Alabama's waterways are diverse because of the variety of land formations they have adapted to. This year, Cahaba River Society has had to adapt to the political and biological pressures with quick and creative ways. Beth said that the staff pivoted, but I would rather think of Randy and Gordon pirouetting like ballerinas, because we did a lot of work. The staff couldn't have done a better job, and I feel so good about where we are because of that. I thank you all for that very much. I'm proud to have been a part of the process, and you're going to hear more about what we've done today. The Cahaba River Society members vote to elect our board at the annual meeting. Okay, now listen carefully. If you're a current member, this applies to you. We're going to use the Zoom survey function in a moment for voting, and you're on the honor system to participate if you're a member. Now I'm turning this meeting over to our president for 2021 and the head of the nominating committee, Julie Price. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie Price. I'm so excited that our board keeps growing in diversity and a range of expertise to better represent all the people who depend on the healthy Cahaba and our region's drinking water. You should have received bios of the nominees out in advance, if you remember, or were registered for the meeting. And Pam, I make a motion to nominate these people.
Well, I second that nomination. We will now launch a Zoom survey, and you can vote yes or no for the entire slate. If you have trouble seeing the votes,
yeah, show the next.
Did I go too fast, Beth?
Yeah, I just want to make sure people saw all the names.
I'll read them real quick. So those who are nominated to be reelected to additional terms, thank goodness, are Robert Pless, Balaji Kukoi, Brant Metheny, and Anthony Overton. And new board members that we hope to come on are Paul Freeman, Kimberly Glover, Allison Manley, Melody Ratliff, and Clinton Smith.
Good. All right, now you might see, as I do on my screen, the CRS board nominations, and it's a simple yes or a no. If you have trouble seeing this, you can vote in the chat box. All right, so please vote now, as I will. And then I'll do submit. All righty. Well, thank you. While we're waiting for the results, I want to thank all the Cahaba River Society board members who have served this past year, and give special thanks to 2 members that are rotating off the board. We will miss you both very much. That's Stuart Roberts and Emily Harley Reed. The past, current, and future board presidents work together as a team. And I'm pleased to announce that Anthony Overton, who leads Samford University's biology department, will be president in 2022.
Yay!
And Anthony's going to lead our question and answer session later. Now, Julie, our 2021 president again, will finish the business portion of the meeting. Oh, look, we had 100%. Maybe Julie should say that.
Great job voting, y'all. I know this is a first time for everybody. Well, before we close the business portion and get to all the exciting updates, I just want to share how grateful we all are to Pam. It's hard to convey this over Zoom, but 2020 was crazy. It was a real test. And Pam, your leadership of this special organization passed with flying colors. You are a shining light. I think y'all can tell over the Zoom what a bright and bubbly person she is. And she really rose to this challenge. She continued the work of the CRS board by Zoom and did not miss a beat. Her smiling face and personality showed through that Zoom frame, and you really felt like you were in person with her. And she's always frank and tells you what she thinks, and she's funny, and she is just full of life. She knows everybody in Birmingham, and we are so lucky that she was our president and that she will remain on the board. And I'm so glad she's going to hang out with me to help me in 2021. So
I'll be there.
Each year we thank our outgoing board president with an engraved paddle recognizing their service, and Pam wanted hers to be a real one, so it's one that she's going to actually use when she's on the river. So Pam, I'm going to pass you your paddle. Thank you so much.
Okay, now y'all watch this. We did it.
Yay.
We did the year, and we had the best time. And I thank you all so much for caring about the river the way we do. Thank you. Mute.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. And Julie had a great tribute there, but I also wanted to say how much fun Pam is, how much we've enjoyed her energy and strategic thinking this year, but especially how she connects us with so many people. She was a teacher. And I swear, anytime we talk about a potential supporter or somebody we need to talk to, she says, I taught their kids. So thank you, Pam, so much. And I think we're ready at this point to start with talking about what the work has been of the Cahaba River Society over the past year and where we hope to go in the coming years. So you want to launch that for me, Katie? Thank you. So these pictures remind us of what our 32 years of Cahaba conservation have been like up to 2020, and how we'll keep saving the river and our drinking water together into the future as soon as we can be back together. We've had a productive year, and that's thanks to so many of you here today. And some programs have even grown in impact. We're going to skim the surface of that in this report to you, sort of like Randy Haddock skipping stones on the river. So first, a quick reminder of the Cahaba River's values. I think some of you might be new to that, and you can switch the slide. There we go. So of course, the Cahaba is a major drinking water source for the Birmingham region, and then the river's groundwater is important for drinking water throughout the entire watershed. It's amazing to have a recreational and educational resource with this level of natural beauty and biodiversity so close to so many people's homes. Our mission, if you want to switch, Katie. Thank you. Our mission is to restore and protect the Cahaba River watershed and its rich diversity of life. And the diverse lives, depending on the Cahaba, include its globally significant biological diversity of freshwater life, and also the diverse people of central Alabama that depend on the river for so many needs. Now, most river groups talk about their watershed as their service area. Next slide. And that, of course, a watershed is the land area that feeds water to the river. But next, because the Cahaba is the main drinking water source for the Birmingham Waterworks Board, we talk about our people shed. And that's all the people whose lives are touched by the river. So for us, that's mainly, and we added in there the Birmingham Waterworks Board service series. So us, that's mainly Jefferson, Shelby, Bibb, Perry, and Dallas County. We have three main goals. Because we know that people take care of places they know and are connected to and love, we connect people with the river to inspire river stewardship through education, volunteer projects, recreation, and the arts. We also advocate for better practices and policies to restore the river so that we have clean water, that we have biodiversity, green infrastructure, and natural flows. And then we work to build our impact through equity, diversity, inclusion, connection, and celebration. And for the first main goal, next slide, which is connecting people with the river in various ways, I'm going to turn things over to Gordon and LaTanya.
There. Sorry, folks. I'm Gordon Black, the Education Director for the Cahaba River Society. For some reason, we canceled all clean field trips in 2020. Pandemonium. To continue reaching the students in our People Shed, we had to innovate by taking our program online. Through an incredible team effort, we went virtual with Beth, Tricia, and Casey making sure we had the funds to make it happen, with Katie adding an additional hat to the many she already wears by videoing, editing, and even acting in the new videos. And Randy, LaTanya, and myself presenting our programming. We have developed a resource library for our CRS website. 19 new videos reside in the library now, and we have 6 more almost ready. Randy shared his incomparable knowledge of all things natural with some presentations before he retired. If you haven't seen his piece on stromatolites, you mustn't miss it. In fact, please visit cahabariversociety.org to see the resource library. Even if you don't learn anything new, a virtual impossibility, you'll be charmed and entertained. Numerous volunteers and outside talent help too. Our friends' kids, to generous teachers from our schools. LaTanya and I have also presented versions of Classroom Clean, sort of in person, via Zoom to various classes, 3rd grade through college, and for Girl Scout leadership training locally and across the US. We are refining working as a team to present and simultaneously answer questions from the chat room. We're getting better all the time. I figure we'll have it all down pat about the time we're able to get safely back in the river with students. I, for one, can't wait for that day. While we've reached over 25,000 folks with our videos just this year, there is nothing as good as actually standing in the river, learning about how it works and its biodiversity. We have been able to continue with a reduced volunteer habitat stewardship program by scrupulously practicing social distancing, mask wearing, and as many safety measures as possible. We safely carried out a couple of river cleanups and some very important and complex invasive taro removals. Volunteers from Spire Energy, the Little Garden Club, PPM Environmental Consultants, and many folks from our People Shed community, including the Cahaba Riverkeeper, helped us continue our fight against taro, including a dangerous patch in the middle of the largest extant Cahaba lily shoal in the Cahaba National Wildlife Refuge. If we don't stay at it, taro could crowd out the lilies. That took a total of 5 separate trips to pull/dig 65 bags of taro out of the shoal and eventually paddle them out for disposal. I estimate we transported nearly a ton of plant material out of the refuge. We have now established an intern stewardship team of 3 strong young folks to expand our work in the coming year. They'll start with developing a riverfront landowner's best practices guide to help reduce negative impacts on our riverbanks and in riverside forests so important to the Cahaba's health and beauty. With the support of our community, we could have intern teams every year and can keep increasing the volunteers we coordinate and the river habitats we restore. We hope to equal or exceed our annual pre-COVID impact of 50 workdays and 400 volunteers. Over to you, LaTanya.
Thanks, Gordon. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm LaTanya, one of the environmental science educators for the Cahaba River Society. And I just want to say, to piggyback on what Gordon said, our CLEAN program has been serving the upper watershed for quite some time. We want to expand our reach in the Black Belt counties by sharing our educational program with the entire peopleshed, what Beth mentioned earlier. And to everyone affected by this great river, whether they live in it or not. So we are building relationships with educators and nonprofit organizations in Bibb, Perry, and Dallas counties. Of course, the pandemic has slowed our efforts. However, no worries. Our classroom clean and virtual library will be used this spring in the Black Belt. Just as we are working with our junior board to develop future leaders, we want to nurture our future stewards and leaders in the Black Belt. Now, we have been working with Alabama Audubon, the Nature Conservancy, Auburn Rural Studios, and volunteers from the Black Belt on a big project that will help revitalize Perry Lake parks by removing downed trees, rebuilding damaged buildings, and clearing trails so that visitors from all over the world and citizens from the Black Belt will have a welcoming place to enjoy nature. And one of our volunteer groups that we are learning from is the Black Belt Citizens Fighting for Health and Justice. They're headquartered in Uniontown. We help steer a donation of bottled water to them from Coca-Cola Bottling United because many Uniontown residents have contaminated drinking water. And just to sum it all up, we are working with Alabama River Diversity Network and colleagues in the area to support initiatives for conservation, civil rights history, and environmental education. And right now we are working on hiring someone with deep ties in the Black Belt for a short-term project to help us make connections and tailor our CLEAN program to the water resources and issues there. So if you know anyone who will be interested, please have them contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, LaTanya. So for this major goal, restoring the river, Randy Haddock has been the lead and my teammate on our work for this to restore biodiversity, water quality, and natural flows. We're really going to miss Randy, but I'm excited to let you know that we are in final interviews for our River Sustainability Director to carry on this work, and we have some great candidates. And Randy will be there to advise us and, of course, with us. The Cahaba's biggest challenges, which are mud pollution, flooding, in-stream erosion, and dewatering during drought, all are the result of the urban growth in the upper watershed. When forests are replaced by paving and roofs, so much more water runs off with each rain, next slide please, that the creeks erode out and the river has to get bigger. The river's banks are collapsing. That's damaging properties and infrastructure like this broken sewer pipe lower right. And that's now the biggest source of mud pollution and habitat destruction for the river is just this excess runoff. Well, our communities want the benefits of growth, but we need better standards and design for stormwater management, less gray and more green. CRS is the lead nonprofit working to promote green infrastructure to become the standard practices like bioswales and pervious paving that get rain into the ground to recharge our groundwater instead of running off to damage our river. We directly train and collaborate with developers and local governments for river protective design of projects. Over the years, we've helped bring green infrastructure design to 22 development projects in major roads, and we've awarded many of those. We've worked with 9 local governments in ALDOT, and that number is always rising, and at over 30 development firms where we've just directly worked with them on design collaboration. Well, this program took a hit in 2020. Communication was a lot harder, and local governments were really struggling with other community needs. Still, we've been in conversation on projects like Signature Homes, Liberty Park, Irondale's new grocery store, and others. We're also helping people protect the water in their communities. For instance, we're serving as a resource for the water impact issues for the proposed quarry and clay that would impact Turkey Creek and the Cahaba, and for the governor's proposed private prison in Bibb County near Briarfield and the Little Cahaba River. And there have been lots of developers clearing and grading without permit approvals during this time, and plenty of people at home noticing them. So we've been helping neighbors in Irondale, Hoover, and Vestavia have a voice with their local government to call for enforcement and cleanup and better control of stormwater. And we also appreciate Cahaba Riverkeeper playing a strong role in this. Because of CRS and our partners, over the past several years, all the cities and counties in the upper watershed have adopted better stormwater design regulations, but most of those, except for Birmingham's, were not strong enough. Because local citizens are demanding it of their elected officials, in 2020, we've been able to contribute to further strengthening of stormwater standards and enforcement in Hoover and Mountain Brook, with conversations underway in Vestavia Hills. In particular, in Mountain Brook, they invited Dr. Haddock to be a part of their stakeholder process, and really we're so appreciative of him. Our third goal is to build impact and the base of people protecting the Cahaba through equity, diversity, inclusion, connection, and celebration. Cahaba River Society has done a lot to diversify our board, staff, and who we serve over the years. Yet we can still become a more multicultural organization to be an effective advocate for all. LaTanya and I were 2020 co-chairs of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee made up of board, junior board, and staff. We're having deep conversations to determine how the society can better advance water equity and ensure that the diverse demographics of our people shed are reflected in who we serve, learn from, and are led by. In 2021, we'll develop our mission, specific policies and actions, and metrics for accountability to ourselves and our community. LaTanya, you want to take it away about the community conversations?
Yes, I'll be really brief. Thank you so much, Beth. So with community conversations, we have been inviting people to the table to have more inclusive conversations about how to build welcoming spaces for all in nature. And also not only that, to reclaim this safe space in nature. And if you're interested, please feel free to contact us. We would love to get not only your insight, your feedback, and just to have a more in-depth conversation about how we can move forward with our community conversations.
Casey, are you coming in?
I am right here. Thank you so much. Just making sure that I was off mute. Hello all, I'm Casey Laycock, Director of Development for Cahaba River Society. From all of us, we want to quickly thank our amazing community of members, donors, and sponsors. We could not have weathered this storm without you, and there's just not enough time to name all of you, to be honest, but please know how deeply grateful and inspired we are by your generous hearts. This year has been especially challenging, and you rallied around us when all of our events had to be canceled for spring and summer. You created your own fundraisers for us and found ways to spread the word about our work. And most impressive of all, you made our annual Cahaba River Fry Down possible when no one thought it could be done by helping us go virtual. And of course, a huge thank you to those teams and sponsors who helped us create the most hilariously heartwarming experience and educational content that was shared with over 35,000 people around the nation and helped us raise over $50,000 towards our program. So just wow, thank you. You can actually still see and visit some of the awesome team videos and see the virtual adventures. And you can even still donate by visiting frydown.com. Please do so. It seems to be like the never-ending fundraiser for us right now since it's still live. If you'll go to the next slide for me, Katie. I want to make sure that I touch on this. For any of you that are joining us today that are not members and want to learn more about getting involved with supporting our work or volunteering, here are all the ways that you can support CRS right now and in the future. We're always looking for volunteers. We're already also seeking Fry Down 2021 sponsorships. We are looking at hosting it. So please stay tuned as we really look at this year and what is possible. So stay along for the ride on that one. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, please feel free to reach out to me directly. And lastly, you can see on our slide deck, you can't forget our gorgeous Save the Cahaba tag. You've probably seen a lot of these on the road, and you can get yours by simply requesting it from your local DMV. To learn more about how to get involved and become a member, please visit CahabaRiverSociety.org. We've included that in the chat box. Check there if you'd like to learn more. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tia Thompson. She is the co-chair of our awesome CRS Junior Board, who is a rock star and even led a fantastic Fry Down team this year with her father that won the hearts of Birmingham. We adore her. She's going to tell you more about our Junior Board and how to join.
And I'm going to slide in very quickly before Tia, because I just want to say I'm so thrilled that Mike McCracken, our former development director, is on the call. And Mike was the one who helped us get our card tag. If there's ever been a gift that kept on giving, it's the one that Mike created for us. And it was no easy feat. It was a huge effort. And Mike, I think we've now raised what, over $1 million that have come in because of the card tag at this point. So Mike, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And so Tia.
Hi guys. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay. My name is Tia Thompson. As they said, I am the co-chair of our junior board, along with my other co-chair, Charlie. And I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update of how the junior board has been going, what we've been achieving. First of all, there's me, co-chair again, and I just think the junior board has given me so many amazing opportunities as far as things like hooking me up with people for the Birmingham Times. I just had an article posted in the Birmingham Times. I think Katie will be able to drop that link for you guys, just highlighting the amazing work that we've done over the summer and this past year, being a part of the junior board. And like LaTanya said, we have a bunch of amazing professional development opportunities that we've had that have been so honored to be a part of. And then, like Casey was covering, we do have opportunities for people to apply. We are so excited to add more people and make this junior board exactly what it was meant to be and what people envisioned when we were creating it. So big shout out to, of course, LaTanya for even having the thought of this junior board, and all of our junior board members. If there's anyone in here, can do like a hand raise or drop your name in the chat. But yeah, we're always looking for more active members always. But I just do want to highlight also as well the things that the junior board has done as far as fundraising and being part of the Cahaba River Society. We've had trivia nights, brewery nights, and then just our regular having fun and having meetings. And through all of it, we have been able to raise close to $7,000, which has been amazing for us. And the bulk of that could not have been accomplished if it weren't for Corey Petway and the grant that we got from the city of Birmingham this past year. So we absolutely love that. We love those opportunities. And then Fry Down absolutely was amazing this year. Special shout out to the Pless family, the Pless team, CC, Robert Pless, and then of course my dad and I got involved. It was super to do more, to do anything that supports our Cahaba River Society. Like I said, I do want to give a shout out to all of our members here, but especially shout outs to people on the EDI committee, such as me, Meg, and Corey, and special shout out to Courtney Newborn, who has been such a help to us and that has not been overlooked with the Rocky Heights printing company. We appreciate everything that's being done for us. And we are coming up with new plans to getting people involved and keeping our junior board alive. And because of people like Jack, complete those goals. And so just want to give a shout out to our junior board, just those quick updates. And yeah.
Thank you, Tia. Beth, are we good to proceed with Nat's portion?
Yes, we are. We're actually running a little bit ahead. Isn't that amazing?
It's a miracle. Yay. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tia. We're all really thrilled about the junior board. It's a lifeblood of any organization, especially now with everything so online. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Nat Mund from the Southern Environmental Law Center. Nat's the Director of Federal Affairs and Director of the Washington, D.C. office for the Southern Environmental Law Center. He's their lead policy advocate with Congress and the executive administration and works on a broad range of clean air, clean water, and public lands protections. And despite all of the seriousness of this work, he has the best sense of humor about anyone I know. So I think we're really going to enjoy our time with him today. He'll give us a brief overview and how his work with SCLC relates to CRS. He'll speak until about 1 o'clock, and then those of you that are limited to the hour-long meeting and need to step away can do so. But if you'd like to stay on for a question and answer session with Nat and the CRS staff, we'll do that until 1:30, and we'll be delighted to have that session moderated by our new president-elect, Anthony Overton. So Nat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Julie, and thank you all for having me on today. I hope Julie didn't, talk too much about my sense of humor. I've tried to defunny this a little bit to talk to you folks, but so glad to see so many friendly faces, folks that I have worked with in the past. Of course, my colleague Sarah Stokes, who I hope you all know well from the Birmingham office of SCLC, but also old friends like Cindy Laurie and Pat Byington, folks that I've known for a long time. So I'm glad to have a chance to talk with you today. And before I launch into a discussion of Congress, I wanted to emphasize how important it is for the Southern Environmental Law Center to have strong local colleague organizations like CRS. The work that we do, whether it's in the courthouse or representing folks before Congress, couldn't be done without strong local partners. And CRS has been an important one for us for essentially since our founding back in 1986. So I've been running the DC office for SCLC since SCLC had a DC office, going back to 2007, and it's been a long and winding road. We now have a mighty 5-person office here in DC, working on a broad range of issues, as Julie said. But I have to say that the last 4 years have been some of the toughest that we've had, based on pushing back against a series of problematic environmental decisions that came out of the previous administration. But we're looking forward to having an opportunity to make some real progress over the next couple of years, at least. One thing I want to point out for folks is that Congress is super, super closely divided in both the House and in the Senate. So that means that there's a very limited option for huge, major changes to occur in policy. And one of the only exceptions to that, from Congress's point of view, is going to be in terms of spending. Through a variety of different processes, there are chances for Congress to pass on simple majorities instead of needing to get a supermajority in the Senate to overcome a filibuster. There are ways of getting around spending issues, getting around that for spending issues. So I think that's going to be a huge part of what we're going to be seeing, is talking about what type of investments we can make to improve environmental quality. But we do expect that the Biden administration is going to take a strong role on advancing environmental policy. Two of the administration's top priorities, some of the pillars of their administration, include tackling the climate crisis, but also tackling equity, including environmental justice. And we think that this is an incredibly important area, one that we're looking to be working on with you and with the administration going forward. They have talked about, as one of their initial things that they're talking about doing, is ensuring that of the many investments that we're going to have to make to get out of the COVID crisis, that 40% of those investments are going to be made in disadvantaged communities. So we're going to be working with members of Congress to ensure that that includes investments in infrastructure for communities, for disadvantaged communities, and ensuring that those investments meet the standards. I saw, as part of the presentation just before, talking about green infrastructure and the need for stormwater infrastructure to not simply be impermeable surfaces and expanded combined sewer operations, to look for beyond that into the many natural resources that we can look at, whether that includes riparian buffers or a broad range of green infrastructure. That's going to be an area that we are going to collectively have a real opportunity to make a difference on for all communities, particularly disadvantaged communities around the region. Another area that we're going to be working, that SELC is going to be working on very aggressively, that I know that we've had support from CRS in the past, involves something that I was told to avoid technical jargon as much as possible, but unfortunately, this is a super technical area. It's the so-called Waters of the United States issue. And what that is, as some of you may know, is what counts as water when we're talking about the Clean Water Act. When you're talking about protecting water quality, what counts? Alabama has the largest amount of stream miles of so-called intermittent streams of any state in the nation. And I found the statistic very hard to believe, considering the geographic size of Alabama compared to some of the other states. But this is true, that and these streams, which don't run all year long, but form the headwaters of drinking supplies for 117 million people around the country, for the city of Birmingham, for the Cahaba River, are threatened. The intermittent water bodies are one of the things that are not going to be protected under the recently enacted so-called navigable water rule. And this is an area where we get bogged down massively. There is litigation about that rule. There's litigation about the previous rule, which from the Obama administration called the Clean Water Rule. There are going to be opportunities to win in court on these things, and SELC is fully engaged on that, along with a broad range of folks. But there's probably going to be an opportunity to engage in a new regulation that the Biden administration is going to have to come out with a new version of what counts as water. And we think that it's, as I know you do, that it's important that it be grounded in science and that everybody has an opportunity to talk about what types of waters should be protected. So we're looking forward to working on that with all of you folks as well. All of this is being writ against this background of coming out of COVID and dealing with the coming out of the last administration's pushbacks on environmental quality. So there is a lot to do. There is a huge amount of work for organizations up and down the scale, whether that's working with federal partners and providing them with grassroots support and folks on the ground who actually have a real experience with these issues, like you and like SELC, to regional organizations like SELC, and of course local organizations that can make all of these issues, which seem so technocratic, can make them real and important. So we're going to be looking toward folks like you guys to help us in that. Unfortunately, and I've been asked to talk briefly about this, Alabama is a tough nut. Alabama has issues, particularly the Alabama Department of Environmental Management is less aggressive on pursuing environmental protection than others in our region by a fairly significant margin, and it's really right there in the name. Department of Environmental Management, they view their role as protecting, as getting permits, helping folks get their permits. Whereas in other parts of the region, you have departments of environmental quality, where they are seeking to protect and enhance environmental quality, to protecting the environment. So it means that when we're working in Alabama, we really do need a strong federal floor to make sure that these Alabama issues, that folks in Alabama get the same protections as people in other parts of the country. So it's something that we collectively need to work together on to make sure that we're getting there. I have to say, I had a 10-minute presentation planned, and I just hit the 8-minute mark, Julie. So I am happy to start the Q&A. I mean, if there are other issues that you would like me to cover right now, I'm happy to. I can talk at great length about a whole bunch of things, more or less truthfully. So whatever you folks are interested in hearing about, I'm happy to share. But I do want to hammer home, as I think I've already done, the importance of working collaboratively. That we need to be working together to make all of this, to make change happen in DC. It's not just going to happen, the Biden administration can't wave a magic wand and make things better. It's going to take a ton of work by many folks to make any of this stuff happen. And we're going to be looking to folks just like you to help make that go.
Well, I'm sure that there are some great questions out there. So I was asked to just close the formal portion of the meeting and thank everybody for coming on to this sort of non-traditional annual meeting. And again, if you're not a member currently, please consider joining CRS as a member. And I can just turn it over to Anthony. Would that be all right, Beth?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that sounds great. Anthony, take it away.
I'll take it over. Thank you, Nat, for that presentation. If you do have any questions, just type them in the chat. We are planning to be here till about 1:30. But Nat, I'll start off the question and answer session. So a question I have for you, I hope you can opine, is how can groups like CRS and people like our members learn more about these federal actions and also about the opportunities for us to weigh in?
Well, thanks for asking. I know that SELC has, we have a email action type of system. So that if you go to southernenvironment.org, I believe that there is a place to sign up. I will endeavor to make sure that we have that and make sure that it gets distributed to everybody. I would also encourage you to work with other if there are other national groups that you find that work for you, whether it's the National Wildlife Federation, the Sierra Club, groups like that also do a fair amount of pushing out of when it's a good time to opine. So there are a lot of different ways to get in there and help push. I mean, I hate to try to say it just one way because there are so many different opportunities for getting in there.
And if you don't mind, Anthony, we're on the email list for Southern Environmental Law Center, so we get their action alerts. We're also part of the coalition Clean Water for All, and that's a great national coalition that is coordinating a lot of strategy, and we get their action alert. There are just a lot of great ways you can sign up. And then when we see really good opportunities that are aligned with what Cahaba River Society needs to see accomplished at the federal level to protect the Cahaba River and our drinking water, we pass those on as action alerts to our members. And so we kind of curate those and boil them down to really important opportunities to help at the federal level. And we pass those on to our members in our own email list.
Yes, thank you, Beth, and thank you for sharing that. We do have a question from someone who's on the call. Nat, do you have anything good to say about the Alabama delegation? Can you identify any bright spots?
Well, Representative Stuhl has often had an interest in environmental justice issues. Good. And talking particularly with regard to coal ash. That's been an area where she's had a lot of interest and sensitivity, and we've had a strong working relationship there. Unfortunately, we haven't had that much luck with the rest of the Alabama delegation. If anybody has an idea about what we can do about Coach Tuberville, that would be really interesting to me. That's been a difficult one. We have fairly regular contact with Senator Shelby. Because of his role in the Appropriations Committee as the chair, or at least as a highly ranking member over most of the time that we've had the office. They're not super interested, but they're also not super antagonistic, which is great.
All right, good. Thank you very much. We have another question. Can you tell us your top 3 concerns if time is short?
Well, I mean, organizationally, SELC's big concerns are, well, we recently went through a strategic planning process as an organization, and Julie can attest to this. And two of our top priorities moving forward are going to be climate change and environmental justice. And those two ideas will be permeating all of the work that we do. And we think that there's a really great opportunity in this administration to advance both of those options, and whether that's through increased funding or hopefully increased protections for to reduce climate pollution and to protect vulnerable communities. We're really interested in taking those actions. How that's gonna, how we're gonna actualize that. This work on the waters of the United States, the clean water, protecting clean water, we think is an area where SELC and our colleagues in the South have a huge opportunity, that we have a lot of expertise, we have a lot of resources, and a lot of real personal stories that we can bring to bear on that issue. So we're going to be working very aggressively on that issue. And another one, which is related, although slightly off topic, off of those topics, is a law called the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, which is what requires you. I'm sure most folks have heard the term environmental impact statement. It requires the federal government to do what they call a look before you leap. Before they spend a lot of money, before they issue major permits for things like pipelines, they have to take a look and see what the impact is going to be on federal resources. And we've seen that pushes against that. And that's how the public provides input into all this decision making. So we think that restoring and expanding the public's voice on a series of environmental decisions using NEPA is going to be really, really important. And again, we think that we have a chance to actually to restore and enhance those protections and see that going forward.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I think you mentioned funding, so I have a question related to funding. Do you think ADEM is weak by design or simply underfunded? And the same question for other states.
I think that's true in other states. I think it's true. The underfunding is true throughout our region, and it's actually true throughout the country. When I used to work at the General Assembly, working for an environmental group in North Carolina in the late 90s. And consistently, what would happen is that if the agency did something aggressive on environmental protection, they'd lose a piece of their funding from the legislature. The legislature would get mad, pull the funding back. That same thing is true on the federal level. EPA's budget is roughly the same now as it was in 2002 when I started working in DC. It's been between $8.5 and $9 billion the entire time. And that sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but more than a third of that is pass-through funds that go to states for wastewater and safe drinking water infrastructure. The part of the EPA that you might think about, that I think about, is like what the EPA does in terms of regulating, all takes place within about a $2 billion a year account, which has been static the whole time, as we've seen more and more need to protect our communities, take a more aggressive stance on climate change, take a more aggressive stance on a variety of pollutants. The amount of money that EPA has to spend on that remain pretty flat. I think that in Alabama, they have done by statute, they've made ADEM weaker than its comparable organizations in other states. For most states in our region, I would say that the agencies are short-funded and short-staffed. At ADEM, I think that there's also a failure of will, that there's a block put in place on making sure that they view the companies that are seeking to pollute as their clients, as opposed to the public that seeks, wants clean air, clean water, safe drinking water supplies. All of that are seen as secondary to the companies themselves, and it's unfortunate.
Okay, thank you, Nat. It seems like underfunding seems to be a common theme among the entities and all the way up to the top, including EPA. And
broadly speaking, I mean, if you just look at water infrastructure, there is a roughly $500 billion shortfall nationally on what we need to do to get all of our wastewater infrastructure up to par. that we are looking at, at whether that's having inadequate wastewater treatment for all the sewage that's coming in, or leaking sewer pipes, which then winds up in our water bodies, and on and on. So there's a huge underserved need out there to protect water, and we need to get get more, get on that, and we're certainly hopeful that we're going to start chipping away at that, but it takes time and it takes money.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question from Melissa and Nat. Can we hear your opinion on the Green New Deal? Do you think it's something that the Biden administration should champion? Why or why not?
Well, I mean, my personal opinion on the Green New Deal is that it's a great idea. I think SELC takes a very broad view of what we should be looking at, that we need to address climate change in every possible way that we can, and that we need to address equity issues in every way that we can. And the Green New Deal has a lot of focus on those things. Unfortunately, it is not clear to me how politically saleable that issue is at this point, given that really close split in Congress, in both the House and the Senate, and the fact that there are some very conservative Democrats in the Senate, holding important positions within the Senate, that the Green New Deal holistically is politically viable at this point. However, I think that we can get big chunks of issues that are espoused there, whether that includes a clean energy standard, or providing funding for communities in transition away from fossil fuels. I think all of that is really important and really possible. It's just not clear to me that we can do it under the rubric of something called the Green New Deal.
Okay, thank you very much. You had mentioned equity in your response, so that leads into our next question. Will the Civil Rights Act be included in addressing environmental justice? Well,
it's a great question. People have been using the Civil Rights Act to try to get at, as it's written today, to try to get at areas of environmental justice, and it's difficult because the law wasn't written with that in mind. So we and organizations across the country have been able to work with communities to get some protections. There's actually at the beginning of 2020, there was a great decision that was handed down out of the Fourth Circuit in Virginia at a Union Hill, which was a freedmen community outside of Richmond that was going to be the site of a compressor station for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And we and our representing the citizens down there were able to make the argument that, at least under Virginia law, that they needed to do a better job of environmental justice analysis and what this was going to do to that community. And the court held that environmental justice is not merely a box to be checked. So that we need to actually do a real analysis to really figure out what we're doing in those communities. And we're hopeful that that type of reasoning can be expanded and can be used in other places. Unfortunately, that case was it turned on a Virginia specific statute. So it's not, you can't necessarily broaden it out. There was a proposed bill last Congress, and I think it's going to be reintroduced this Congress, sponsored by Representative Grijalva of Arizona, Representative McEachin of Virginia, that would basically add an environmental justice cause of action to the Civil Rights Act and make it possible to go after what the so-called disproportionate impacts. We think that is the future, that is the way that we have to go to be able to address environmental justice issues over the long haul. That making it possible for communities to access justice that way is going to be really critical. Unfortunately, again, just like with the Green New Deal, it's not clear that we're going to be able to see that happening at this point. So we're going to be looking at alternate ways of doing it, and whether that's expanding the Civil Rights Office at the EPA as one possibility, or having, through that National Environmental Policy Act that we were talking about before, having them look, when doing that, at environmental justice issues, when doing an environmental impact statement. We think that all of those things will enhance protections disadvantaged communities, but they're not the solution. In SELC's view, the solution really is going to have to involve amending the Civil Rights Act at some point to include that protection. But there are lots of partial things that we can do between now and then to improve protections. You know, it's that whole not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. We think that we need to go out, you know, to go and advocate for these other changes, which will help if we can't get the final thing.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from one of our Facebook listeners, Leslie Speaks, and her question is, what is an effective way to talk and think about how environmental justice is benefited by preservation efforts?
That's a big question. And I'm not sure that I'm well situated to respond to it. Obviously, any efforts that increase investments in communities, and whether that's through preservation, through conservation, or what have you, do potentially have you know, sort of indirect benefits for environmental justice. But I'm not sure that I'm qualified to speak to that question. My work at SELC is largely focused on the pollution end. One of my colleagues here in DC, Anders Reynolds, focuses on our public lands protection. And I'm sure that Anders would have a much more complete and comprehensive answer for that question. I'm afraid that I'm just not the right person.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll shift gears just a little bit. This is questions related to the SELC. Would you mind giving us some tips or ways for our young people to get connected to the SELC with opportunities, or even when it comes to ideas like nonprofits for environmental justice?
I think that we through the website obviously has some sign up opportunities. We have an associate program that we run as well as an internship program, mostly for law students and young lawyers. Included in that are a number of fellowships for law students. I'm not sure that I have great ideas on that. Julie, do you want? Can you put on your board hat and remind me of things I might have missed? Or Sarah?
I think the way young people can get engaged, there's a very good social media presence for Southern Environmental Law Center and regular online webinars, newsletters, and then the communication staff at Southern Environmental Law Center. You know, not everything's about litigating, which is something that I really like about both CRS and Southern Environmental Law Center. A lot of it is about winning hearts and minds and convincing people that conservation is in everyone's best interest. And so I think it's really just engaging your peers. I would also like to say that Melody Ratliff, one of our new board members, is on the Next 30 group of the Southern Environmental Law Center. So we have a lot of synergies with Southern Environmental Law Center, and they're just fantastic. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? Or maybe she had to step off.
No, I mean, that's perfect, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. We have a question from Beth Stewart. And she asked, what could the infrastructure funding mean to our Black Belt counties with inadequate sewage treatment and drinking water systems?
Hopefully, it can mean a lot for those communities. I think that those are the very communities that the Biden administration is talking about targeting with this infrastructure funding. We are looking, I mean, there's this, folks may have seen in the news, there has been, right now, the Congress is dealing with a bill that's going to spend $1.9 trillion on COVID relief. That is not the same, which is a huge amount of money, but it is not the money that is going to be directed toward these communities like in the Black Belt and elsewhere in the country. That's going to be in a second round of stuff that we're probably looking at later in the spring, in the April and May timeframe. At that time, we are hopeful that there's going to be a huge tranche of money that is going to become available to states, and we're hoping directly to localities, to help address issues like sewage. I mean, to start making that, when I was talking about, getting at that $500 billion deficit that we suffer from, trying to make a dent in that deficit. And again, with the administration's executive order trying to focus 40% of that money on disadvantaged communities, it seems that the Black Belt counties are very likely to be recipients of that. And I think it behooves us, SELC and CRS, to make sure that those communities get their chance to improve their wastewater infrastructure, and also to engage in a whole broad range of green infrastructure while doing so as well. Not simply making sure that it's that their sewers are working, although we absolutely must do that, but to do other natural infrastructure improvements as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Scott Duncan, he wanted to send a shout out to the SELC's podcast, Broken Ground.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Mentions that's a fabulous series on sea level rise in the Southeast. So thank you for sharing that, Scott.
And it's not just sea level rise. I'm sorry, if I may say, it looks at a whole slew of issues. We did one season on sea level rise, but one of our communication staffers, who I'll give a shout out to, Claudine McElwain, was a producer for the National Public Radio here in DC before she came on to SELC. So it is the most. I mean, it's as polished a product as you can imagine, but it's interviews with real folks that are really impacted by environmental issues across the South. Fantastic thing. So I guess it's another thing for young people to listen to as well.
Okay.
Really great product.
Thank you, Nat, and thank you everyone for sharing your questions. I'm going to pass the floor back to Julie Price, our incoming president. And Julie, the floor is yours.
Are we closing out the meeting at this time?
I didn't see any more questions coming about, so.
Okay, that sounds good.
Julie, I'd love to throw one more question to Nat, if you could, and then one question for CRS that I'd love for Anthony to answer, and Randy. The one for Nat is, a big concern during COVID has been how vitally important clean water is, and concerns that both large and small drinking water systems are having to reinstitute shutting people's water off when they can't pay their bills. Is there talk in the COVID relief bill of funding being able to come both to the utilities to help replace lost revenues so they don't, as well as a requirement, a national moratorium on water shutoffs? Is there discussion of that?
Thanks, Beth. There absolutely is, actually. I believe that both of the items that you just mentioned are expected to be included in the package that we'll hopefully be seeing sometime later this month or in early March when they come around to it. Part of that $1.9 trillion does include money for state and local water utilities to fund that, and it is expected to be coupled with a prohibition on if you take the money, you can't shut off people's water. So we are expecting to see that sort of protection being put into place. I think that the Biden administration may have put a moratorium on it in some instances already. So I think it's a great opportunity to show support for folks in this time, and it is absolutely, as I understand it, it is already included in the plans. We're gonna have to wait and see exactly what those plans will look like. At the moment, I don't want to bog folks down. The process is nuts. And at the moment, we're in this very, very 10,000 foot idea where it's like, wouldn't it be nice to spend money on water infrastructure? On water protection. That's where Congress is right now. And it's going to be a matter of weeks before we see any language, any bills starting to come out that will say, okay, and here's how we're going to do that. And we're going to be in there working to make sure that is included. That's the environmental piece that was in there already.
Well, and we really appreciate that. I just want to share with our members that together with Alabama Rivers Alliance, we've been trying to work at the state level here with the governor to have a water shutoff moratorium. That didn't go anywhere at the governor's level, but we also were supporting the need of the Birmingham Water Board and our rural water providers to say, gosh, state of Alabama, there's an awful lot of your CARES funding that you haven't spent yet. Why can't you send that to the water utilities to help replace lost revenues so that they don't have to shut people's water off? And there really was never a response to that. It's just a vitally needed area. And then we've also been part of some of the national coalitions with SCLC, Clean Water for All, and some of the water infrastructure groups at the national level, calling for this to be included in the next COVID relief package. We've signed on to a lot of letters and contacted folks. So it's exciting to hear that really could be a possibility.
I think that it's worth keeping up the drumbeat, though, that just because it's being planned right now doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition unless folks stick it out and keep on pushing. You know, unfortunately, this is an area where Senator Shelby could be a real asset. I don't know that he will be, but this is the type of thing. You know, money coming to Alabama is something that Richard Shelby usually loves. So let's see if we can help make that make that happen. Not easy, but we're definitely going to be pushing for that.
Thank you so much, Nat. You've been really wonderful. And Anthony, I've got one more question. It's something that didn't come up in our annual meeting. It's an initiative of our good friends at the Nature Conservancy, and Dr. Haddock. Randy has been real involved, and there's been a big group working on this for years. And that's the possibilities for getting fish past the 2 dams on the Alabama River that keep the Cahaba disconnected from the Gulf of Mexico, and the possibility that those anadromous Gulf fish runs could be restored all the way up the Cahaba River, and what that could mean. I know Scott probably can speak to that. Randy, Anthony, who would like to tell us more about that?
Well, I'll jump in, I guess, to say that Mitch Reed and Jason Throneberry worked very hard to work with the Army Corps to secure some funding to do studies on the Alabama River system and the lower Cahaba River system to look at what kind of fishes are there, their capacity to get past the 2 dams, Miller's Ferry and Claiborne. So it looks like Jason and Mitch were able to secure about $2 million if that money can be matched. They need to get matching funds in order to secure all of that. So we're hoping that there'll be some biological studies on the lower half of the Cahaba and the Alabama systems to help facilitate the early stages of that process of figuring out a way to get fish around the dams so that they can get into the Cahaba River system and restore what could well be one of the longest anadromous fish runs in the eastern half of the US. Enormous amounts of money are spent on those damn salmon out west. If a fraction of that were spent on the great diversity of mussels and fishes here in the Southeast, then they could do a tremendous service for biodiversity in the Southeast. Hoping for that.
Can I ask you to indulge me, Randy, to say just a little bit more about why would restoring these fish to the Cahaba make a difference for our mussel diversity?
Well, there's mussel diversity, there's cultural. I mean, let me start by not answering your question. We used to have fish runs that came from the Gulf all the way up to at least to Centerville, maybe further up on the Cahaba, of mullet and other fishes. And these towns that are along the river there had fish fries, which were big community events. There were the sturgeon that used to make it all the way up to at least to Centerville. And that's a part of Alabama's heritage that it's just gone. It's missing now. It needs to be restored. Sorry about that. Shannon came home and the dogs went bananas.
They're excited.
But the mussels are important because right now, the most common mussel left in the Cahaba River is called the elephant ear. And it is about 10 to 1 biomass of elephant ear to everything else. And about all of the elephant ears are, almost all of them are 60 years old individuals, which means that we're not recruiting baby elephant ears into the system. And that's because these mussels rely on a fish that needs to get past those dams. And those dams went up in the 60s, and here we are 60 years later, and that we've had no recruitment during that time to reestablish those populations. So unless we get those fish passage around those dams, it's a good chance that we're going to lose the elephant ear who you know, they get senile like the rest of us, you know, and they're going to start dying off. And when they do, that's 80–90% of the biomass of mussels in the river are going to go. And that's not good for a river. You know, people talk about the rivers, the mussels being kidneys. And if 90% of your kidneys are gone, that's just not a good thing.
Thank you, Randy.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, fitting that Randy will close us out here unless somebody else has a burning question. Julie, you want to wrap us up?
Sure, definitely. Well, thanks everybody again for being here. And I'm particularly thrilled about our new board members. Welcome. And I hope that those of you who aren't yet members will join us. Please follow us on social media and read the newsletters and the emails and stay engaged in every way that you can and get out on the river. Thanks everybody for a great meeting. And thanks to Nat.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me, folks.
Thanks, Mike.